Please welcome our next panel. America's industrial base is powered by skilled workers, moderated by Kevin O'Connor, host, This Old House.
Good morning. As you heard, I'm Kevin O'Connor from This Old House. And I will start by saying that for the 45 years that our show has been on television, we have first and foremost always highlighted the trades. Each of our on-camera experts is and has always been a licensed professional contractor. Now, it is becoming more difficult for us to highlight the trades simply because there are fewer people going into it. And that is a problem that we feel acutely within construction, and in particular, residential renovation. But the gentlemen who share the stage with me today see it from a much broader perspective. They see it not only in construction, but also in industrial, manufacturing, energy, service techs, and all of that. They also happen to be the leaders of the initiative with the Business Roundtable that is on the front lines trying to address this issue. They have initiatives in place at their companies already and new ones that are coming, which is why they are up here today. So let me just start with a couple quick introductions, and then we will get right to it. David Gitlin in the center right here, Chairman and CEO of Carrier, a global leader in intelligent climate and energy solutions. 35 brands, 50,000 employees, and serving customers in 160 countries. Calvin Butler on the left, President and CEO of Exelon, one of the nation's largest utility companies, serving 10 million electric and gas customers across 6 states, as well as the District of Columbia. And Marvin Ellison right here is the Chairman and CEO of Lowe's, a Fortune 100 company with a retailer of over 1,700 locations and 300 associates. We have about 30 minutes or so to get into it, so let's start right away. And David, I'm going to start with you. You have already announced some initiatives, both in manufacturing and the service tech, which we want to hear about. But for every person who's going into the trades, it turns out that the statistics tell us that there are maybe 20 job openings out there. And so the question is, what are you doing about that? What can we all do about that? And how do we create a sustainable pipeline to start filling all of those existing open jobs?
Well, Kevin, thanks to you for being here, and Marvin and Calvin. It's a real pleasure for me to be here with both of you. The problem statement, Kevin, is significant. You mentioned that there's, for every 20 job postings that we have, there is one qualified applicant right now. And if you think about the economy in the United States as a whole, the ratio of job postings to unemployed is 1-to-1. So we have a significant gap in qualified, skilled professionals, and it's only going to become more significant because the demand for skilled professionals is just going to increase. You think about our industry. We now have infrastructure spend. We have data centers going up. A data center may have 150 chillers in it, so you might need 4 dedicated technicians just for one facility, where you might have 4 dedicated technicians for the south part of Chicago. So the demand in HVAC, the HVAC industry, we have 425,000 technicians today. We're going to need to hire another 400,000 to 500,000 over the next 10 years. And what you're seeing is fewer folks going into the field. So we have an aging population. Just 10 years ago, 1 out of every 3 high school graduates would go to a community college vocational school. In just 10 years, that ratio has gone to 1 out of 6. It used to be that if your father, and I say father because for our technicians, this is another issue, 99% are male.
Right.
But if your parent was an electrician or a plumber or a residential HVAC technician, you often went into it. They're often going down different pursuits, warehouses, digital careers. So the amount of applicants going into vocational schools is decreasing, and the available younger population is decreasing, and the demand is increasing. So at Carrier, we're doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I think with Marvin and Lowe's and the BRT initiative, we're going to double down on making it more attractive to enter into what's a really exciting and attractive career. And it can be apprenticeships. We're partnering with vocational schools like the Laurel Institute. We're partnering with the unions like the pipe fitter unions. We're creating career advancements through becoming a journeyman or a foreman, so technicians have more upward mobility, more incentive compensation, more benefits. So we want to make this more digital opportunities. So big problem statement, but I know with this group and the CEOs of America coming together, we can address this head on.
Yeah. Okay. Marvin, you've done your share of supporting the skilled trades. You've done it in the community. You've done it with nonprofit associations. Can you tell us about some of those things that your company has done, and specifically whether there's anything out there that you find has really worked and should maybe be emulated by other companies?
Well, yeah, it's great to be here. And for me, it really starts before I became the CEO of Lowe's. I grew up in a rural community in Western Tennessee. And it was not uncommon back then for me that you had the high school that had most of the traditional academics, but then next door you had a vocational building for guys and girls who wanted to learn a general skill in auto body, construction, electrician, plumbing. And a lot of those people who are my former classmates turned that into not only jobs, but careers and businesses. But over time, for some reason, we started to look upon those types of jobs as secondary and less than, versus getting a 4-year education. And for me, candidly, that was the perception that I understood coming out of high school. But that's dramatically changing because of need. And so what we've decided to do as a company, to your point, is to just say, what can we do versus looking at this and being concerned about the trajectory? Can we help to change it? And so a couple of years ago, we started an initiative through a program we call Gable Grants, where we decided to invest $50 million over 5 years to create 5,000 skilled trades, employees or opportunities for individuals, whether they work for us or someone else. Because the biggest challenge we hear from our customers who are contractors is they can't find skilled labor. And as excited as all of us are about the emergence of technology like AI, AI isn't gonna fix a hole in your roof. It's not gonna respond to an electrical issue in your home. It's not gonna stop your water heater from leaking. And so we're always gonna need, in my space, in these gentlemen's world as well, skilled trades individuals. And so we took this 5-year initiative and we started to invest directly into vocational schools, community colleges, and any organization with a commitment to creating skilled trades for individuals who wanted to learn how to do this. I'll give you an interesting statistic. Today, as we sit here, the construction trade has 500,000 job opportunities that are unfilled because people are not skilled to do the job. Just think about that for a second. And in the electrical trade as an electrician, there are 80,000 job openings per year that they're trying to fill, but they cannot find the skilled labor. And so we've invested in these community colleges, these local organizations. And in addition to that, we had a really interesting initiative recently where, oftentimes you have kids that sign a letter of intent to go to college to play sports. We had a group, USA Skills, that we partnered with, and we basically had, roughly 5,000 kids that signed up for skilled trades. That was their signing day, to go to one of these locations to get a skill. So we're investing, we're working cross-functionally with others to try to make sure we can bring visibility to the issue, but more importantly, as a big part of our community, what can we do to help change the trajectory?
Right. So Calvin, 10 million customers across several regions. I can pretty much assume they all want the lights to stay on.
That's it.
Across those same regions, though, severe shortages in workforce development, in particular in your sector of energy. What is it that you guys are seeing in terms of how acute the problem is, and what is it that you're hoping to do to recruit and to create that sustainable pipeline? Because we're going to continue, as we've heard from these statistics, need so many more people coming into these fields.
Kevin, thank you. And to the Business Roundtable, thank you for having me and even having this conversation. And like my colleagues, I love the statistics that they put out there because the issue is real. And when you take the energy sector, we're in a period right now of unprecedented growth. So what that means is that how are we going to step up to the challenge? You talk about having the privilege and responsibility to serve 10.5 million customers. But what that does is that when the men and women, when something goes wrong, they need to be there to show up, but more importantly, doing the job each and every day. It starts with the partnership with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBW. Identifying the problem and really helping drive the solution. How do we get individuals earmarked or targeted to go into the training required to keep the lights on and the gas flowing? That's one. Two, what are we doing then as a company to foster an environment that is encouraging young people from the communities that we serve to work here? Now, you think about where Exelon's footprint is. We're in both urban, rural, coastal communities. Some of the richest zip codes and also some of the most under-resourced zip codes. And we're a big believer as your host utility, and we're part of the economic engines of those cities. How do we encourage those that live in those communities to work for us? So what we recognize is that our typical community college programs, our typical college recruitment wasn't going to do it. We had to start in the high school level, letting these young men and women know that there's opportunities at our work, at our place, because no one was talking to them. And what we also had to recognize is that they had to have an understanding where I need you to keep your nose clean. And if you do, we have opportunities for you. So we started offering internships as early as their sophomore year in high school. We went in and developed a curriculum within those high schools to train them how to do these jobs and bring them in throughout the summer and assure them that this first summer, you do what you have to do, you stay with us. We would provide them transportation to the workforce. We also recognized that some of these young people that we were trying to attract, you get into the environment, they had never been in a corporate environment or work environment before. So then you had to go into the soft skills. Now people would be like, look, you just want the best. Yes, we want the best and brightest, but we were going to train them. And then the next issue we identified, to be a utility worker, you also had to pass a test called a CAS test. Now, if you are a young person that is not technically inclined or had never done that before, that CAS test might as well have been in French. We worked with the high schools to begin preparing them to pass that exam. We're not giving answers, but giving them the thought process and the analytical and technical skills to get there. And what we're seeing, because we have an aging workforce that has been identified, that we now have a pipeline of young people. But let me also stress, what we also did is we partnered with local and national organizations to really identify the need and the opportunity. One program I'd like to tee up is Year Up. The Year Up national program, we've been involved with them for years. And what I can do is this. Those are some of the smartest young people in the IT field with no college degree but certifications. Because these young people are digital natives, I get my problem solved so quick, whereas opposed, you give me someone with a degree, they're gonna come back, give me 5 hours later. These young people take my phone, take my laptop, and those are all those we employ hundreds of Year Up interns across our organization on an annual basis. One example. Another national program is NEED, where we identify high school students to come into our area every year and really focus on energy, STEM education. We see the need, we fill the gap, and we work with our peers across the entire sector on why can't you duplicate this effort. What I love about this is that so often as CEOs, we get to talk about the great things we do as an organization, but it's even better when others emulate what we're doing, because then the impact is tenfold, and that's what we're trying to do.
So something doesn't add up. I mean, we have got hundreds of thousands, millions of job openings. David, we were talking out back. The average wage for some of your technicians
100,000.
is 100,000. So lots of jobs, lots of really good jobs, a huge shortage. Can we acknowledge that there is a perception problem? This is a question for all three of you. Maybe you believe that, maybe you don't. I'd love to hear if you do or not. But I'd also, if you do believe that there is a perception problem, that we've, for whatever reason, told young people that working with your hands is not as glamorous as going to college or something like that. Is there a responsibility of corporate America to lean in to change that perception problem? Anyone?
Well, I think there's 100% a perception problem. Calvin was talking about partnering with sophomores in high school, which, I was taking mental notes of that because that's phenomenal. We've been doing it with seniors and helping pay their scholarships to go to a vocational school. And then if there's an HVAC curriculum like at the Laurel Institute, we teach the class, we provide them internships. But to see you starting at the sophomore year is very, very interesting. But some decades ago, and it's similar to what Marvin was talking about, school classes in high school had home ec, they had industrial arts. You used to take woodworking as a junior, you took welding as a senior, and it became that it was a very natural progression. It was much more exciting to play with your hands with cars or to do a lot of that mechanical work. And now it's about digital, it's about that 4-year degree. But I'll tell you, you can get a community college education for $5,000. A 4-year public institute is $25,000. The average 4-year private is $60,000 at a university, and I'm not in any way disparaging 4-year schools, but only 60% of those graduating from college today have a job full-time in their year of expertise within 6 months.
Right.
So I think that there's 100%, Kevin, a perception issue, and I think it's our job to make it clear by having people spend time with our companies and see how interesting it is. And Calvin was talking about some of the soft skills. Our technicians are not only on the front line repairing chillers and in the residential space, the condensing unit outside your home. They're interfacing with human beings. They're interfacing with customers. We actually give our technicians incentive compensation for sales. So they are a part of our sales force. So it's a much more attractive industry with upward mobility into different fields as well.
Do you agree, perception problem? And
Yeah.
do you have thoughts on how we or how you all lean into changing that?
Yeah, I think for sure. And I think that, we've all probably played a role in the perception problem. I grew up in this little rural community. My dad never graduated from high school. And so every generation would like to see the next generation do better. And so I was taught from my earliest remembrance of words that I was going to college because it was a dream and aspiration that my parents could not achieve themselves. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's also okay to take a step back and kind of look at where we are and look at where the opportunities exist for career growth. Even in my environment with 1,700 plus stores and over 300,000 employees, when young people come to me and they desire to work in the corporate office, my advice to them, stay as close to the cash register as you can.
That's right. That's right.
Which means stay in the stores, stay close to the customers, because you will always have employment opportunities to grow, because we sometimes aspire for things based on perception, not on the reality of opportunity. And the statistics bear out that there's incredible career growth opportunities, incredible earning potential, and the opportunity is going to be significant. And I also think, quite candidly, with the emergence of modern technology, whether it's large language models, AI, and all the other next level innovations that we don't even understand yet, these jobs are going to be more in demand and more available because technology will supplement some of the corporate jobs that people aspired to over the last couple of decades. But these jobs will be jobs that will be required, that technology, as I mentioned earlier, just will not have the ability to solve as quickly and as efficiently. So I do think, that we're going to get on a platform, and we're very thankful of the BRT to give us this opportunity to educate and to make this more of a relevant topic across multiple industries, because this is going to be a critical issue in America if it's not already one, and we want to get in front of it.
Oh, it already is one. Calvin,
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a perception issue, but I also would think there's a knowledge gap. And I'll tell you where I think about the knowledge gap. The knowledge gap is within high schools themselves to how they're talking about opportunities. A high school guidance counselor is incentivized to say, you talk about how many of your kids are going to college.
Right.
When we showed up at the local high schools, they didn't even know where to start. So we went back, we took a step back and went into the superintendent. They didn't know where to send us and how to connect us. So what we did, we started talking to individual principals. And what we found is that when you spoke with the guidance counselors, because their lack of knowledge as to opportunities that may present themselves at Carrier, Lowe's, or Exelon, or one of our utilities, they didn't know how to start the conversation with the young people. So when we stepped in, it became a model for what we did in other local high schools. That is what I saw as one of the biggest, because the people that are most influential is those that are in the schools each and every day. And if they're not saying, hey, I see where your skill set or your aptitude is lead, have you considered? Just turn the light on. All pun was intentional. And we can do the rest. And that's what we've seen has been the most powerful difference for us, is that getting those teachers and guidance counselors to think beyond a college degree as the only way that someone can make a living, a family-sustaining job. To David's point, you come out after 3 or 4 years of training as a journalist, you're making $100,000 without any overtime, and we're changing lives in that way, and that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
One other thing, Kevin, on high schools, to Calvin's point, is most high school offer AP courses where you get credit towards classes in a 4-year school. They do not offer classes that will go towards credit at a community or vocational school.
Right. Yeah. I would love to tell a lot of the people who watch our show when they fawn over our carpenters and our plumbers, I would like to take them out on the weekend and say, why don't you come on their boats?
Yeah.
And see the companies that they run and the people that they employ.
You go into one of our parking lots, Kevin, you see more big trucks and that are costing those F-150s or so. And it's our men and women, they're all in, to your point.
We could talk about perception forever. Let's move on to some creative solutions that you folks are working on to, fairly complex problems. David, I'll start with you. When I left yesterday to come down here, there were 2 plumbers crawling around my house installing one of your combi boilers.
Yeah.
And I noticed on the wall they had piped copper, the same material that their great-grandfathers would have used 100 years ago. Mm-hmm. But that copper was going to the combi unit through a hydraulic separator, a super efficient heat exchanger, into a circuit panel that can self-diagnose a problem I can control by my phone, and they can even potentially diagnose and fix remotely. How are you creating an initiative, training that teaches the traditional skills, but also what we now all know are the new skills that are out there that are mostly digital, super sophisticated?
Well, first of all, Kevin, you're hired because I think you know more about HVAC than just
calling my guy right
anyway.
now to say to take the cost of the boiler off of my bill.
And I'm assuming that was a Wiesmann. We bought a
Wiesmann,
company in Germany called Wiesmann that, if anyone's interested, it could help the quarter. But we, what I would say is that we will train at Carrier 100,000 technicians over the next 5 years. So we train our own folks, but we also train folks that are part of our channel, our distribution and our dealer channel. We have about a third of the residential market in the United States, and we work with about 300,000 dealers across the United States. So we're in about 30 million homes. So a lot of what we do is train folks throughout the channel. And a typical career path, you will see folks that are technicians. They start in residential, go to light commercial, kind of the rooftop units, and then will end up often on the bigger chillers in commercial. So we train every step of that progression. What has changed is using things like virtual reality and augmented reality, because it can give a much different virtual training experience than on-site training. It really supplements it very well. And we do have to train folks on the digital tools because all of our devices are now connected. So if you think about the data coming off of your boiler or a chiller in a commercial office building, we're using a lot more data to drive remote diagnostics. So if you think about someone who has to show up at this building, they have to park their van, they're often dealing with ladders, they have to find a spot. So it's very difficult. You got to show up understanding what the issue is, so you show up with the right part, diagnosing it. And then the future where we're going to much more is prognostics, where you can anticipate a failure before it happens. And a lot of our technicians are on the front line working with homeowners or commercial office building owners to deal with that diagnostic. So all of our technicians, it's a matter of fact that they're trained on not only virtual and augmented reality and use that as part of their training, but on the digital skills as well.
Marvin, the 300,000 employees across the country, it's a broad footprint. You're in a unique situation where you're in all sorts of different communities, dealing with all sorts of different associates. How do you lean into the diversity that you're exposed to, but also to the types of workers who may be underemployed, and train them up to get them interested and to get them with the skills that we need them to have?
Yes, it's an interesting challenge we have, because when I look at the portfolio of stores we have, to your point, I mean, we're literally across urban America and rural America. And I oftentimes will tell people, we got stores in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and in Philadelphia, Mississippi. And trust me, they may have the same name, but they're dramatically different from a demographic perspective. But we have to operate them both. Operate a very urban store in a major city, and a very rural store with a population, I think, of less than 5,000. And what you find out is that these issues tend to be prevalent in those two extremes. And so for us, we want to tap into those rural communities, and the best way to do that, as you've heard from Dave and Calvin, is just through the local high schools and the local community colleges. And in the urban areas, it's the community colleges, but it's also other organizations. And what we're trying to do is just leverage technology to make this easier from a virtual learning perspective. And as well, I mean, we've tried things that we have within our company where we have something called a task force that we put in place where we offer free tuition for our own employee base, where they can go not only get a 4-year traditional education, but also we'll give them the opportunity to go get a 2-year or community college. And it's part of our incentives, and we call it tracks of trades within the organization. Luckily for us, we've had over 25,000 of our employees to take advantage of this. And what we find out is that it's sometimes uniquely in these urban and these rural communities. And so you would be surprised to find that the solutions are virtually the same. And it really comes down to education, comes down to communicating access, and finding the right institutions or organizations to work with to tap into that workforce population.
And when someone goes through tracks to trades, what does that process look like, and where do they end up?
Well, when they go through the program, we basically will provide them an educational curriculum based on what they choose. And what's really interesting is oftentimes when they finish, rather than stay as an employee with us, they will sometimes go and work for one of our customers, which could be a company like Carrier. It could be a general contractor. It could be a builder. And we're perfectly okay with that.
You cannibalize your associate base, and you're fine with that because?
100% fine, because it fills the need that is much greater than we have a much greater need than finding, a specific employee. We would rather that employee go out and start a business. We'd rather that employee go out and work for another institution to be a little bit of a disciple, to share their own journey and to continue to educate and to bring other people in. And so we're perfectly comfortable cannibalizing our employee base as long as they take that skill and that skill is transferable.
Customers for life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Calvin, you have a unique skill. I presume it has a lot to do with the regulation of your industry, but working with state, local, federal governments. We were talking beforehand about the lack of a national energy policy and what you have to deal to do that. There seems like we have a lack of a skilled workforce policy as well. With your experience and background, what do you think can be done, should be done, to bring those groups together? And how do you create that pipeline of workers for your industry specifically with this giant retirement cliff that you are facing?
An alignment of federal, state, and local policy is on my wish list. But what you can appreciate is that every governor, every federal administration wants to put their fingerprints or their blueprint into work. So therefore, as an energy company, more importantly, as an industry, we need to make the adjustments. And as we make those adjustments, what we have to determine and what we have laid out are some core elements that are critical to meeting the need of the country. One of the things that all of us agree on to this point is that we are in an unprecedented time of growth. We talk about the skilled labor, but this growth is causing all of us to pause and say, what does this future workforce and future energy dominance look like, energy security? And we're now talking in broader terms than just the next year or two. So what we are really working on right now is what are the core principles as an industry. I have the privilege of being the chair of the Edison Electric Institute for the next year. And at the core, we talk about energy security, ensuring that we have a grid that is protected, not just from physical attacks, but cyber attacks. And then you have to go down deeper when you identify that, or what are the skills in the future that we need in that regard. The next piece we talk about is affordability. If affordability is going to be a key driver in this industry, how are we going to attract the people and a workforce where it keeps our cost of labor and our ability to invest in the capital for this industry on the forefront? Resource adequacy. How do you get to build the transmission lines and the additional supply you need? Again, we're all competing for that same technical skill. One of the things that we did to go out and do this is that we looked at all the job openings we have across our company and said, does this really require a college degree? Mm-hmm. And over 70% of the jobs that were posted really didn't. Mm. What they required is some equivalent work experience and some certifications, but they didn't require a 4-year degree. So that is a process that we have went through with the industry, my peers and so forth, of identifying what do we really need and how can we fulfill that promise of keeping the lights on and the gas flowing. So that's how we're approaching it.
So to each of you, as we sort of start to wind down here, I'm curious as to your thoughts as to where we are in this process and how optimistic or pessimistic you may be about our ability to solve what we all acknowledge is a very acute problem, but also one whose solution is so important to the economic well-being and the security of this country. Anyone? David, why don't you?
I would say that in my opinion, where we are is that over the last few decades, the country's taken a step backwards and we have an opportunity to take a huge step forward. I think coming out of World War II and in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that there was so much pride in becoming a professional skilled labor in this country. And you mentioned perception issues. There's so much pride amongst our 1,000 technicians that we have in the United States here, and we're going to add another 1,000 over the next 5 years. And when I meet with them or I go to a job site with them, they are tremendously talented, tremendously dedicated. They care so much about the company, our customers, what they do. They take great pride. They take great pride in training the next generation. So there's something incredibly special about the skilled technical professionals that we have in this country. We just don't have enough of them. And I think what we have to do and what Josh and the BRT has given us an opportunity with us co-chairing this new initiative to do something as an industry. We are all, and as a community, because Calvin said it, but we are robbing from each other. 9 out of every 10 technicians that we hire is a rehire from somewhere else. Only 1 out of 10 is a new hire who's new to the industry. So all we're doing is passing the problem from one company to another. To see the business community coming together as one to make it more attractive, to honor, to reward, to recognize our skilled professionals, like they're the heartbeat of the country, and we need more people on the manufacturing line. We need to produce more. We need to support the equipment that we have out there. And I'm thrilled at the opportunity to come together with Marvin and Calvin and the rest of the BRT to make a difference in something so I'm incredibly optimistic. But we have to be pragmatic and we have to be clear-eyed about the challenges and we have to hit it with huge urgency.
We have one more order of business. So in a word or two, Calvin, Marvin, where are you on the optimism scale in terms of our ability to solve this problem?
Well, I'm a public company CEO, man. I have to be optimistic about everything. So I'm optimistic. Look, as Dave said, we're fortunate that the BRT has raised this to a level of urgency, and he and I are honored to co-chair this strategic initiative on workforce and skilled labor workforce. And so we're going to be working with leaders like Calvin and other CEOs and businesses to continue to raise the level of education, change the perception, and make sure that we put measurable key initiatives in place across all types of unique industries like the three of us represent to really make a dent in this. And we do believe that there's an opportunity right now with the push for manufacturing jobs in America and really just the reality of the issue that we have, just educating the general public. We think we can chip away at this.
Does that stand as the announcement of the initiative from you two? Does that cover the basis?
That's official.
I think that's it.
That's terrific. We're out of time, but I do want to say from our perspective at this old house, the tradespeople who we work with, having your organizations and this broader organization, pushing into this, leaning into this makes us extremely happy that it is happening. And we appreciate not just your time up here today, but wish you guys the best of luck because it is so important to all of us. So thank you very much for your attention, but also to these gentlemen for their insight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.